Okay, this is a podcast from Byrchall High School, Mr. Williams. For those of you listening, there's going to be no pictures or film on this one, it's just audio, so you don't actually need to look at the screen, you can just listen to the stuff we're saying. Obviously, this is to support the work we're doing on the cardiovascular system at the moment, and that you've been doing at home. I just want to run through a couple of things just to make it crystal clear. First of all, on your packs, you should be working week by week. So this week is week 3. This pack will take us to 1 week after half term. And it's been all about the cardiovascular system. I'm going to run through some stuff that you should have already put in your notes off the work I've set. First of all, is that the cardiovascular system is sometimes called the circulatory system. You may have heard it called both. I'm not sure if it's called circulatory in science as well. But it's a cardiovascular system and it just focuses on the heart. Nowhere in cardiovascular does it ask about the lungs. Yes, the heart does work with the lungs, but most questions on a GCSE exam are asked either about the heart or they're asked about the lungs. And if it was asked about the lungs, it would be the respiratory system. So we've been looking at the cardiovascular system, as I said, sometimes called the circulatory system, but it's all about the heart, okay? The word cardiovascular, cardio means heart. So you've obviously heard the term cardio lots of times. Cardiac is to do with the heart, and vascular is to do with blood and blood vessels. So cardio is heart and vascular is blood and blood vessels. Now you were asked as part of the task to look at the journey of the blood going through the heart. Now again, I know you've touched on this in science, so hopefully that should have given you a bit of a head start on that. I just want to run you through the journey of blood through the cardiovascular system. So blood will start in the vena cava. Actually, first I will mention that if you're looking at a heart on a piece of paper, so I'm actually looking at a heart on a screen right now. As you look at it, the right-hand side is actually the left-hand side, because if you actually put that picture onto where your heart is on your chest, it would flip over. So as you look at the picture now, and I'm looking at a picture of the heart right now, the right side as I look is actually the left side, and the left side as I look is actually the right side. And we're going to start by talking about the vena cava, which starts in the top right-hand side of the diagram, but as you're looking at the diagram, it will look like it's on the left. Okay, so we go to vena cava, and then the blood comes down the vena cava, which is coming back from the body. It's now lost all of the oxygen it has. The oxygen's being used up. It's coming back. It's deoxygenated, and it goes into the right atrium. The right atrium is the top on the right, which, as I say, is the left as you look at the picture. It then travels through the tricuspid valve. Now, any valve is to stop backflow of blood. So the tricuspid valve is to stop blood, once it's travelled through it, going back into the right atrium. So we've gone vena cava, right atrium, through the tricuspid valve and into the right ventricle. And again, the heart would beat and push the blood. It would then go up through the semilunar valve. And again, that valve is to stop blood backflowing into the right ventricle. And it would go into the pulmonary artery. And we'll talk a little bit more about the pulmonary artery later on. The pulmonary artery would take this deoxygenated blood to the lungs, where it would pick up oxygen. And then it would come back to the heart in the pulmonary vein. So we are now on the other side of the heart, which is the left side of the heart. But as you look on the diagram, it would be the right-hand side. So back to the heart in the pulmonary vein, we've now got oxygenated blood. It's picked up some oxygen. It goes from the left, down from the pulmonary vein into the left atrium. And again, it would then squeeze, and then it would push the blood through the bicuspid valve. And the bicuspid valve, again, is to stop backflow of blood into the left ventricle. Again, the heart would contract, and then it would push the blood up again through the semilunar valve. It's the second semilunar valve we've had. And then it would go into the aorta, which is a massive artery. And then the aorta would take it off and distribute this blood, which is full of oxygen, to the working muscles, because you all know, and you should know, that muscles demand oxygen, which is what makes them work. So I'm just going to run through those again. It goes vena cava, right atrium, tricuspid valve, right ventricle, semilunar valve, pulmonary artery, lungs, pulmonary vein, left atrium, bicuspid valve, left ventricle, semilunar valve, aorta, and then off to the working muscles. The only real structure that's on the diagram that I sent you is the bit of the muscle, the heart muscle, which divides the two sides of the heart. So if you look at the diagram I sent you, there's a thick piece of muscle wall that divides the oxygenated and the deoxygenated side. That's called the septum, and the septum stops the blood from mixing, because on one side we've got and now my kids have interrupted, but that's okay. On one side we've got the okay, hello. Okay, we're just recording something for my students, and I'll come back in a minute. Okay, you going to see mummy?
No.
Go on.
No.
Thank you.
No.
Come on, off you go.
No.
Yeah. No. No.
Sorry.
Hello. You want to say hello to everybody?
Yes.
Say hello.
Hi.
Say hello. Come there. Hello. Right, can I finish this now?
On.
Yeah, okay. I'll go back to mummy. Come on. Thank you, Fee. Okay, apologies for that. That's my daughter just there demanding my time. So we've got this septum which divides the heart into two sides. The septum, as I said, is to stop the oxygenated and deoxygenated bloods mixing and divide the heart into two. So we've got the oxygenated part, which is on the right-hand side of the heart, and we've got the deoxygenated part, which is on the left-hand side of the heart. Of course, I keep saying, if you're looking at a picture, it will look slightly different to that. Now, it's really important that you know that journey of blood around the heart. It's absolutely vital that you know that. So make sure you know the structures and the places that the blood passes through on its journey around the heart. Now, the other thing is that the heart is sometimes called the double circulatory system. And that's because it transports two different types of blood. One is deoxygenated, and the deoxygenated blood, it travels around the heart and then it goes off to the lungs to pick up some oxygen. And we have another side of the heart, which is the oxygenated side, which has already got oxygen in the blood, and that's going to send it off around the body to the working muscles. So it's called a double circulatory system because it's pumping to two different places at once. Okay, so we said we've got the oxygenated side, which is pumping off to the muscles and the rest of the body to give it oxygen, and we've got the deoxygenated side, which is pumping to the lungs to pick up oxygen. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in lessons when we see you again. But it does pump to two places at once. Now, also remember that the heart is a muscle, should I say. So just like any other muscle, if you train the heart, it will actually increase in strength and size. So if you go out doing lots of cardiovascular fitness work, so you're doing lots of running or biking or cross training or whatever it may be to improve your overall fitness, your heart, which will pump and beat faster and faster, is a muscle, and you can train it. Now, it's not, somebody asked me the other year, could you train it so it gets bigger and bigger and sticks out your chest? Of course you couldn't do that, but it will get stronger and the muscle will work more efficiently if you train over a long period of time. As I said, the heart is a muscle, so you can train it. Now, you've also then in week 2 been asked to look at blood vessels. Now, there are 3 types of blood vessels: arteries, veins and capillaries, that you need to know. The first thing to say is, I mentioned this when we went through the structures of the heart before, is that the pulmonary artery and the pulmonary vein are unusual, and that's because they do the opposite job to every other vein and every other artery in the body. Arteries' job is to carry oxygenated blood away from the body. That's what they do. A away, arteries away. The only exception to that is a pulmonary vein. And the pulmonary vein carries blood from the lungs back to the heart. before it's taken off through the heart and out through the aorta. So the pulmonary vein is the only vein that carries oxygenated blood, and the pulmonary artery is the only artery that carries deoxygenated blood. Every other vein and artery does the opposite of that. Really confusing and completely annoying, but that's the case. So arteries normally carry blood away from the heart. So arteries carry blood away from the heart. It's really important to know. Apart from the pulmonary artery. Arteries are under high pressure. So do they need valves? No, because the blood is travelling fast through the arteries anyway. So they do not have valves. So we've got arteries carrying blood away from the heart under high pressure. They don't have valves because the pressure is enough to keep the blood moving. They have thick walls because the pressure is great, and if it didn't have thick walls, it would tear, and that would be a problem because you get internal bleeding. The arteries are thick in terms of the walls to make sure that when the blood pressure goes up when you start exercising, that they're strong enough to carry the blood through them without a problem. They're also elastic. They do what's called vasodilate, which means they go wider, and they constrict, which means they go thinner when the blood is passing through them under different pressures. So I actually do this in your notes, but they carry the blood away from the heart. They do not have valves, no valves. The walls are thick. The pressure of blood is high, and they are elastic. So they are the properties of arteries. And I keep saying arteries, apart from the pulmonary artery, carry blood away from the heart. Veins. So veins tend to do the opposite job. So veins carry the blood back to the heart. So this is when the oxygen's been dropped off, and we're now going to get the blood back into the heart, which will start the vena cava that we talked about before. Veins would carry the blood back to the heart from the rest of the body. So they carry it into the heart. So if you look at the word vein, V-E-I-N-S, it's got the word in it. So third letter is an I, fourth letter is an N, the word in, into the heart. So carry blood towards the heart, and they're carrying deoxygenated blood apart from the pulmonary vein. So all veins apart from the pulmonary vein carry it back to the heart. Do they have valves? Well, absolutely they do need to have valves. The blood is travelling a lot slower now. So it's done its job. The arteries have taken it under high pressure. The veins are bringing it back to the heart. So it does need valves, should I say, because it's under much lower pressure, and we want to stop backflow. We want to make sure the blood all gets back to the heart to then pick up some more oxygen again and go off around the body. So it does have valves to make sure that the blood is going back in the direction we want it to go. Veins have thin walls. They're not under as high pressure, the veins, so they don't need to be as strong. So the thickness of the walls on a vein is reasonably thin. And they are under low pressure. They're under low pressure. The blood is now not travelling as fast. It's making its way back to the heart. It's under much lower pressure than before. So what we've got is this low pressure, thin walls, and we've got valves in the veins to make sure we don't get any backflow. So arteries are carrying it away, and veins are carrying it back too. Now, capillaries are the third main form of blood vessel we've talked about, and they've got a slightly different job. Capillaries do what's called gas exchange. So they are the blood vessels that take the blood around the muscles and drop off oxygen or pick up carbon dioxide, and then they transport it in the bloodstream. So they actually sometimes called, I've seen them called taxis. So they take it from the bloodstream and put it into the muscle and take the waste out. And there's a song I think I've put on the video for you called the Bloodmobile, and the Bloodmobile is actually referring to the capillaries. So their job, capillaries' job, is to help with gas exchange. So in terms of what direction they travel in, they travel to all the muscles and the organs, and they drop off blood with it's oxygen rich, and they take out the waste, which is carbon dioxide. They are ridiculously thin. They're going to actually let gas diffuse out and diffuse in, oxygen out, carbon dioxide in. So they're very, very thin, 1 cell thick, and they do not have valves, okay? So the role of the capillaries is for gas exchange. They go around the muscles and they pick up the oxygen from the alveoli and they drop off carbon dioxide, etc., etc. So the capillaries do a very specific job to help gas exchange for muscles and for organs. Now, finally there, I just wanted to look at the key definitions, which is some of the work that you should be doing this week. Now, there's a number of definitions that you need to know to do with heart rate. Now, some of them you'll have heard of before, fairly simple, some are a little more complicated. The first one is heart rate. This is the one we'd ask you to do in practical lessons, where we take your pulse at the end, or if you've got a Fitbit or you've got a heart rate monitor, you can do it on that. And this is the number of times your heart beats in 1 minute. It's that simple. So heart rate is the number of times your heart beats in a minute, measured in beats per minute, BPM. And by the way, if you get a question on that in the exam, you must put BPM or you won't get the mark. Dead simple. The number of times your heart beats in a minute is your heart rate. So you might call it your pulse rate, but for GCSE, we'll call it heart. The second definition is called stroke volume. Now, every time your heart beats, it pushes blood out of the system. Now, from what we said before, it's going to push blood to two places. It's going to push blood to the lungs to pick up oxygen in the pulmonary vein. And it's also going to push out blood on the other side, the oxygenated side, in the aorta to push the blood around the rest of the body. The stroke volume is the amount of blood that leaves the heart every time you beat. So you've got two words there. A stroke of the heart is what's a beat of the heart, and volume is how much. So stroke volume is the amount of blood that leaves the heart per beat. So every time it beats, there's actually a way of measuring this. We wouldn't obviously be able to do that at school. You can go on, if you went to a hospital, they could measure how much ejection, it's called ejection fraction, how much blood would pump out per beat, and that is stroke volume. Stroke is a beat, and volume, how much. The third definition, very important, is called cardiac output. Now, cardiac output, there's two ways you can look at it. It's actually defined as the volume of blood pumped out of the heart in the ventricles per minute. So it's how much blood is leaving your heart per minute. And there's actually a very simple calculation to find out how to do this. So we've got your heart rate, which is how many beats you do in a minute, and your stroke volume, how much blood per beat. If you times them together, you would actually get your cardiac output. So there's two answers to this if you asked what it is in the exam. You can either say cardiac output is the amount of blood pumped out of the heart per minute, or you can say cardiac output is stroke volume times heart rate. That's actually measured in litres per minute. Final definition I just wanted to mention is recovery rate, and that is defined as the time it takes the heart to return to resting after exercise. So let's say my resting heart rate was 60 and I start exercising and my heart rate goes up to 120 beats a minute. I then stop exercising. It is how long it takes my heart rate to go from 120 beats, which is what it was doing when it was working, to 60 beats a minute, how long it takes to get back to resting. And that's called recovery rate. Now, the fitter you are, the faster your recovery rate will be. So if I was taking looking at heart rates of football players at a professional football club or a rugby club or any kind of professional sport, their heart rate would recover faster. Their recovery rate would be faster than, let's say, mine would be. It would take them a lot less time to get back to their resting heart rate. Now, the final thing I used to look at this week was to look at the effects of exercise on those four definitions to do with the heart. So I said that on the information I've sent you, short term equals immediate. So short term effects or immediate effects are, right now I'm sat in a chair recording this podcast for you. If I went outside now and started running up and down my road, what would happen to my heart? What would happen to those four things? Long term was if I trained over months and months and I looked after myself and I'd made a big effort to get fitter, what would happen to my heart if I trained over a period of months? So Short term is sometimes called immediate, what would happen now, and long term is sometimes called, distracted then again. Long term is sometimes called regular. So regularly trained and what would happen to my heart. So you've got 4 things. So if you go back to our 4 definitions, heart rate. So my heart rate right now, if I took it, is probably about 60 beats a minute, average resting heart rate. Short term, my heart rate, if I went running now, my heart rate would increase. So all you'd have to put in the exam is short term effects of exercise on heart rate, or is your heart rate would increase. So heart rate would increase if I went running right now at my house, my heart rate would go up. Fairly obvious, heart rate would increase. Stroke volume, short term. So if I went running out my house right now, got out this chair and started running, my heart would pump out more blood per beat. Therefore, stroke volume is also increases. So my stroke volume, short term, immediately would increase. Cardiac output. Again, if my heart rate went up and my stroke volume went up, my cardiac output would also go up. So if I again get out this chair right now and I start running up and down my road, the amount of blood leaving my heart per minute, which is my cardiac output, would also increase. Resting heart rate, which I put at the bottom of your diagram, wouldn't change. That's not a short-term effect. So my resting heart rate wouldn't change. Long term. So if I look at my heart rate long term, if I exercise every day for the next 3 months, and I look at what happens to my heart rate. So my heart rate long term is slightly different. My resting heart rate would drop. It would actually be an indication of the fact that I was fitter. So on the bottom right hand corner of the diagram I gave you, your resting heart rate would decrease. It would go down because it would mean I'm fitter. My heart wouldn't have to work as hard to achieve anything. So long term, so if I train regularly over a period of time, my resting heart rate would drop. Long term, my stroke volume would go up again. So every time my heart beat, as it's a muscle, it would improve in size and strength. My stroke volume long term would also increase. My cardiac output would also increase again. So my cardiac output would go up, as would my stroke volume if I trained over a longer period of time. It would simply mean my heart got bigger and stronger, and therefore it could pump out more blood per beat. So we'll just run through that again, a diagram I gave you. Heart rate short term will go up, but long term won't really change. It's a matter of, it would go up if you like, but it's not really that relevant. Stroke volume short term would increase, and stroke volume long term would increase. Cardiac output short term would increase, and long term cardiac output would also increase. And resting heart rate, short term no effect, no change, and long term it would decrease, showing that you are fitter. Okay, so that's just a recap really of the work we've done over the last 3 weeks. And I understand it's sometimes hard without me there to really support you as I could do in a class. Don't forget you've got the Everlearner. I know some of you sometimes can get a bit annoying as it's really tight on spellings. If you're having any problems logging on with the Everlearner, then please get in touch with me. But it is a really, really useful tool. You've also got GCSE Pod. You've also got GCSE Bite Size. Do remember we are doing the OCR syllabus. No other syllabus you're working on. The OCR syllabus is the one you're working on. Next week I'm going to set you some work back on the Everlearner. So you've done some weeks off it. I'm going to set you some work on the Everlearner for week 4, which I will send to you. That work will be emailed to you, and then it'll be set on Everlearner, so you know what to do. But it's going to be on the cardiovascular system anyway. I'll leave it there, 25 minutes with a bit of an interruption by my daughter. I hope you're all really well. If you have any problems, please do email. You know how to get in touch with me on school email by now. Hopefully I'll see you all soon, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. I said there will be further podcasts to follow. This is going to be on my YouTube channel, which if you need to find it, you just type in Rob Williams Byrchall onto YouTube, and then you can subscribe that way. There's already some stuff up there. Some of it's not the right courses for you, so do be careful. Make sure you use the links that I send you. And I will see you all soon. Okay, bye.